$15 million. That was the price on his head, and for over a decade, nobody could collect it. His name was El Mencho. He built the most violent cartel in Mexican history. He flooded America with fentanyl. He bought generals, politicians, and entire police forces. And every time the world got close, he vanished. Until February 2026. Today we go inside the life and the end of the man nobody could stop. Part 1. The beginning. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes was not born into power. He was born in 1966 in Michoacan, one of the poorest and most violent states in all of Mexico. No money. No connections. No future that the system was willing to give him. Just hunger, poverty, and a world that had already decided what kind of life someone like him would live. As a young man, he made a decision that thousands of Mexicans made before him. He crossed the border into the United States looking for something better. He worked. He tried to build a life. But the criminal networks around him were too close and the money was too easy. He was arrested on drug charges in California, and the American government deported him back to Mexico. That deportation was the moment everything changed. Back in Mexico with a criminal record and no legal path forward, El Mencho went all in. He joined the Mencho cartel and started learning, not just how to move drugs, but how power worked, how organizations were built, how men were controlled, how enemies were eliminated. He was not just a soldier. He was studying. He was preparing for something much larger. By the time he understood the business completely, he made a decision that would change the criminal world forever. He was done working for other people. He was going to build something of his own. And in 2010, he did exactly that. Part 2. Building the Monster. The cartel Jalisco New Generation, CJNG, was founded by El Mencho in 2010. And from its very first days, it operated on a completely different philosophy than every other cartel in Mexico. Where other organizations negotiated, CJNG destroyed. Where other cartels avoided the military, CJNG attacked them directly. In 2015, CJNG ambushed a military convoy in Jalisco. 15 soldiers were killed. A military helicopter was shot out of the sky. This was not a gang protecting a street corner. This was an organization declaring open war on the Mexican government itself. And the message was received by everyone who needed to receive it. Do not come for us, because we will come back harder. El Mencho understood something fundamental about power in the criminal world. Extreme violence, used publicly and without hesitation, does not just defeat enemies. It prevents enemies from ever forming in the first place. Rivals looked at what happened to the people who challenged CJNG and made a simple calculation. The cost of resistance was too high. Within 5 years, CJNG was operating in more than 20 Mexican states. Within 10 years, it had networks across the United States, Europe, Asia, and Australia. El Mencho had built a global criminal empire faster than anyone before him, and he had done it while remaining almost completely invisible to the outside world. Part 3. Fentanyl and the American connection. Most people understand El Chapo because of cocaine. They understand the old cartels because of marijuana. But El Mencho saw the future before anyone else did, and the future was fentanyl. Fentanyl is 50 times more potent than heroin. A dose smaller than a few grains of salt can kill an adult human being. And the cost to produce it is almost nothing compared to what it sells for on the street. El Mencho built an industrial fentanyl operation inside Mexico, pressing it into counterfeit pills that looked exactly like legitimate prescription medications. Americans buying what they believed were painkillers were actually buying a substance that could stop their heart with a single pill. The D publicly named CJNG as the single largest supplier of fentanyl entering the United States. The overdose deaths that followed were not accidental. They were the predictable result of flooding a country with a poison disguised as medicine. Tens of thousands of Americans died every year from fentanyl, and a significant portion of that fentanyl came from El Mencho's operation. The money that came back was beyond calculation. Billions of dollars moving through shell companies, real estate, cryptocurrency, and front businesses across multiple countries. El Mencho became one of the wealthiest criminals alive, and the United States government with all of its intelligence, military technology, and $15 million bounty, still could not find him. Part 4. The Ghost. Here is the part of El Mencho's story that made investigators lose sleep. How does a man wanted by the FBI, Interpol, and the Mexican military simply vanish for over a decade? The answer is that El Mencho was not hiding. He was operating openly, in plain sight, protected by a system he had spent years and billions of dollars building around himself. He almost never used a phone. Communication happened through layers of intermediaries, human chains so long and so compartmentalized that even if one link was captured, it revealed almost nothing about where El Mencho actually was or what he was actually doing. Every person who spoke to him directly knew only what they needed to know, nothing more. He moved constantly, never staying in one location long enough for surveillance to establish a pattern. The mountains and forests of Jalisco became his territory, remote, difficult terrain where military operations were slow and dangerous and where local communities had been paid to be his eyes. Any stranger, any unfamiliar vehicle, any unusual activity, word reached El Mencho before any threat could materialize, and corruption did the rest. This is the part that is hardest to accept but impossible to ignore. Law enforcement officials, military commanders, federal prosecutors, politicians, El Mencho's money reached all of them. When raids were being planned against him, he frequently knew before they were launched, not because he was lucky, because he had purchased the information from the people planning the operation. The United States had a $15 million bounty on his head. El Mencho was spending more than that every year, keeping himself untouchable. Part 5. The Fall. In February 2026, after months of intelligence gathering that was kept tighter than any previous operation against him, Mexican armed forces moved on a location in Jalisco. And this time, El Mencho did not get the warning in time. The operation was not clean. There was a firefight, serious enough that when El Mencho was finally taken into custody, the most wanted man in North America, in handcuffs for the first time in his life, he was wounded. The Mexican government announced the capture. The United States responded immediately. The D issued statements. $15 million had been earned by someone, somewhere, who had finally given up the right information at the right time. For one moment, it seemed like the end of something enormous. Al Chapo had been caught, Al Mayo had been caught, and now El Mencho, the man who had surpassed them both, was finally in custody. And then he died, in custody, from the wounds sustained during his capture. The most dangerous man America could never catch died before he could ever sit in a courtroom and answer for what he had built. No trial. No testimony. No moment of public accountability. Just a wounded man in a prison cell who did not survive his injuries. His death left the biggest question in the criminal world wide open. What happens to CJNG now? History has given us the answer every single time this question has been asked. El Chapo was captured and the Sinaloa cartel kept running. Every major cartel leader before El Mencho was removed and the organization adapted and continued. El Mencho knew this. He built CJNG specifically to survive without him. The structure is in place. The money is in place. The networks are in place. And somewhere right now, a new leader is stepping into the space he left behind. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes started with nothing in a poor state in Mexico and built one of the most powerful and deadly criminal organizations the world has ever seen. He killed soldiers, bought governments, poisoned hundreds of thousands of people, and evaded the most powerful law enforcement agencies on Earth for over a decade. He died in a prison cell. Wounded. Caught. Finally cornered after a lifetime of running. Whether that is justice, you decide. But the fentanyl is still flowing. The cartel is still standing. And the story of CJNG is far from over. Subscribe, because next week we go inside the gang that started as prisoners in Venezuela and ended up taking over American cities. That story is coming. Do not miss it.